Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kelly Hall. I'm a faculty member here in the Woodbury School of Business and also director of our Women in Business Impact Lab, the sponsor of this Impact Den series. And on behalf of our entire Impact Lab team, I can tell you that we are so excited that you are here with us. And more than that, we are grateful. We're grateful that you have carved out some time to come here, to connect with community members, to connect with UVU students, and to really learn and build relationships. So we appreciate that. In just a minute, I'm going to introduce our community partner who is collaborating with us on this morning's event. But before I do that, and in case this is your first time attending one of these events, I will briefly tell you about our Women in Business Impact Lab. So our Impact Lab was founded a year ago, and really we aim to collaborate with community partners to support the advancement of women in the workplace and to help bridge the gap between women's leadership aspirations and their attainment of leadership positions. And we do this by educating the community on the experiences of women at work, conducting and disseminating research on gender in the workplace, and engaging industry partners and students in events such as this one. So thank you so much for coming here. We've been really busy over the last year. So just to give you a little snapshot of what that has looked like, we've had 194 students engaged in our research efforts. We've had 186 local leaders who have been here on campus engaging in events, including in this particular series, our Impact In. We had a total of 52 research contributions, so that was practitioner-oriented articles as well as academic peer-reviewed publications. We have our Women in Business Impact Lab podcast. Last year we had 24 episodes, but we've already had more come out. So if you are not connected to our podcast, make sure you do that. It's displayed here on the screen. And we established this Impact Den series, this Learn and Network event series, just to provide opportunities for collaborative learning, opportunities to connect with people in the community, to connect with folks here on campus. And so thank you again for helping us carry those efforts forward by coming here this morning. And I want to give a special shout out to all of the students who are in attendance. I've taught 8 a.m. classes before, and I know that at 8 a.m. event, that is a really tough sell sometimes to students. So thank you for coming here. By making the decision to come here, you are making a small deposit in your bank of knowledge and experience and training and connections. And if you continue to make those deposits over time, you will have, a sufficient balance to make important withdrawals when you're at key points and you really need to advance your career. And thank you again for all of our local leaders who have joined us. We have a lot of amazing leaders in the room here. We have many organizations represented, just to name a few. We have our friends from 1-800-CONTACTS. We have Intermountain Healthcare, KPMG, and many more. So thank you again for coming here. And one of the most impressive leaders in the room is my friend and colleague, Jennifer Jenkins, who is partnering with us on this morning's event. She serves as executive director of a national nonprofit that is dedicated to promoting children's literacy. And she has just done amazing work. She was recently featured in Utah Valley Magazine for everything that she has been doing. And in addition to her nonprofit work, she stays busy doing events like this. She's spoken in Silicon Slope lecture series. She's traveled to universities around the country. I know that she was recently playing with some of my friends back east at Norfolk State University, where she was working with students on leadership skills, career readiness, storytelling strategies. And so we're so glad that we now have her here to work with leaders in our community and emerging leaders from some of our undergraduate and graduate programs. So thank you, Jen, for being here. And without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic over to you. So come on up.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to be here. I do speak a lot, but I also feel like I never get past that initial fear, right? That's a very common, relatable thing, is that, the fear of wanting to be accepted, the fear of wanting to be heard and understood, the pressure to communicate well. Those are all things that I want to focus on today as we talk about how leveraging storytelling can help us connect with stakeholders and improve our brand, and all of the messaging that we put out to whoever we want to listen, and that is a broad group. As Kelly said, I work with a national nonprofit that formerly was called Writers Cubed Inc. and is now called Operation Literacy. And I tell you that because it's part of the story that I'm going to tell you today, and so I'll come back to it. But Operation Literacy, we are responsible for the Teen Author Boot Camp, which is one of the largest teen writers conferences in the nation. We have to say one of, because we don't know of a larger one, but we want to be careful. It's kind of a love child of mine. It's something that was created by a group of friends, something that has grown into something that we're proud of and that has done a lot of good to help a lot of people. The Book Drop program it's a program that's dedicated to connecting children from Title I schools who are underprivileged, who don't have access to books in their home. We come into Title I schools, we give them free books, and we also try to instill a desire to read those books by flying in New York Times bestselling authors of those books to talk to those kids and connect with them. So hopefully instilling a love of reading, but also making sure that books get in the home. These are some of my books. In the last 8 years, I've published 8 books. Most of them are young adult fantasy. This one here at the end, Teen Writer's Guide, is a nonfiction, and it's kind of a how-to for teens to help them tell their stories. But my number one clientele is adults, ironically. So I want to introduce you to Lisa. Is this a familiar picture to anybody in this room? Don't raise your hands. It's okay. Lisa was a product that was introduced by Apple in 1983. It's really amazing because it was the first freely accessible computer for the lay individual outside of a big corporation. At the time, IBM really ruled this market space. They were known for the big mainstream computer that that required special programming for the company, an expensive staff hire to run the computer, and eventually, Apple, Steve Jobs, decided that he was going to invest $50 million, which at the time was a lot more than it is today, to launch and develop this product. So to market this product, Apple took out a 9-page ad in the New York Times. And in this ad, they talked about all of the amazing technological advances that this Lisa computer was going to bring forward into the industry. It used fancy terminology that most people didn't understand, but the idea is they wanted to flex. They wanted to show just how amazing they were as a brand. And this product they were so proud of. How do you think it did? You would think, right? Because it's a superior product. It should have done really, really well. It actually crashed and burned. It was a train wreck. Jobs lost tons of money, and Apple struggled for a number of years. Well, Steve Jobs ended up getting a job at Pixar. Did you know that? Steve Jobs works, you did know that. She knew that. Steve Jobs works at Pixar, and he was around storytellers, and I'm biased, but storytellers know how to communicate. This is their whole job. As an author, my job is to manipulate people and to lie. I make stuff up and I make you want to believe it. That's what I do as a storyteller. It's a little cynical definition, but it's essentially what I do, right? Why did this struggle? Why did this ad fail? Why did this product struggle? Every brand has a story that it has to tell. And when I use the term brand today, I want you to consider your personal brand. I want you to consider the overarching brand of the organization that you work with and represent. I want you to consider the brand of a program and even the brand of a product, because all of those elements have to tell a story and it has to be individualized. On your table, and I should have mentioned this right before I got started, there is a handout. At the top of the handout, there is a QR code with a 3-question survey. If you don't mind just quickly doing that while I jabber on, that would be fantastic. And I'm gonna get a drink just a second. Okay, so stakeholders. What is a stakeholder? Just so that, and this kind of speaks to what I was talking about. Not only do we have stories for our own self, for our brand, company brand, our program brand, product brand, we have different people at different times that we have to tell different versions of this story to, our brand story. Potential customers, strategic partners, senior management, trying to pitch yourself to get that raise or to get that job. Potential sponsors, prospective employers, I said that. Customers are bombarded with 3,000 calls to action every single day. We're constantly being hit with this messaging. So how are we going to make things clear? I want to see these statistics really quickly. If you're done, I have this ready to go. I'll hurry and look. Okay, I can communicate my company's purpose to customers and stakeholders in one simple phrase. 50%. 50% of this room of highly intelligent people, I can just tell you, look super smart. Like I should pass this mic over. 50% of you said that you feel comfortable communicating your company's purpose. If you are an employer in this room, you can use this as a population study, okay? A total population study of highly motivated people who are here at 8 a.m., right? That's terrifying. I can tell you as somebody who runs my organization, the idea that 50% of my staff don't know how to communicate our purpose, it's scary. I know what I want my customers or stakeholders to feel. This one we did a little bit better. 9% of you said strongly agree. Yeah, we didn't do that much better. I'm sorry, I'm looking at 5 different percentages here. Only 9% of you said strongly agree. That you know what you want your customers to feel. Have you considered that? As an author, that's something I have to consider every time. I'm not just telling a story about point A, character goes from point A to point B to point C. I need my reader to leave the story experience having felt something. I actually started writing because I had just been to Paris for the first time with my little sister. And when we came back, we went to Les Miserables with this group that we traveled with. And I knew the music well, but I had never seen the play. And I remember after the play, I sat in that chair and it really inspired me because I had just spent 2 hours, I was exhausted. I had laughed, I had cried, I had felt the camaraderie of warfare. I had experienced love. I had experienced death and pain. I was taken through on a journey emotionally. That's good storytelling. Okay, last one, really quick. I am intimidated by the idea of making a sales pitch. Oh, how many of you think that 50% or more were intimidated by the sales pitch? Yeah, we were at 59%. So half of us are intimidated by the sales pitch. I will commiserate with you, and I will present myself as an empathetic guide by getting a little vulnerable with you. The first time I tried to pitch a book, I was at a conference. It was a writer's conference, and I had paid for time to pitch in front of an editor. And I wanted to impress them so badly, and I had practiced with my writers group, and I had a script in my mind. I knew how to do this. So this editor that was my dream editor, I sat in front of this woman, and I started to speak, and I can't even tell you what came out of my mouth, but I will tell you that at one point she asked if I was okay. I didn't sell the book, guys. At least not to her. I ended up selling it 10 years later when I figured out how to pitch. And it was actually the book that ended up doing better than any of my other books as far as from a professional industry accredited standpoint. It did well. So it's just like, we can have a superior product, but can we tell its story? And that's really what we're going to talk about today. And that maybe was a long introduction, but I think it's important to understand and establish the fact that story matters. And the winners in this game of industry and fast-paced business moves and advertising, the winner in that race is the person who can tell the best story. So that's my goal today, is to help you tell a good story. So what makes a good story? The best writers say a lot with only a few words. Stephen King had a way of describing the hair on a waiter's arm, and then you just had this picture of this waiter. You knew what he looked like. In my head, he was Polish. You know what I mean? Sorry, shouldn't have said. Sometimes you need to edit it, Jen. Edit the thoughts. No, but that's the power of just a few strong words strung together in a way that's strategic. How many of you are intimidated by this subject? Tight wording? No, you guys are here. You're in. Okay, good. So storytelling is a sense-making device that follows a familiar pattern. The human brain is drawn to simplicity and order. In fact, that's part of our survival instinct. We want to be able to process information as quickly as possible. So in our brain, we compartmentalize really fast. We seriously stereotype every person around us, everything around us, the sky. We do it to everything. And it's not because we're bad people and we're making these cruel judgments. It's because we are beasts that require survival. And there's so much input coming in that if we don't compartmentalize it, we'll stall. So our brains are amazing. When we can use a structure to communicate what we want to with our brand, it makes it simple to digest for our consumer. So the primary job of the brain is to help a person survive and thrive. And you guys know Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Human beings are constantly scanning their environment for information that will help them survive and thrive, So if it doesn't help them, find food, if your messaging doesn't help them find food, shelter, a tribe, a spiritual awakening, if it isn't central to their survival, then they're going to not listen. The brain's going to call that noise and not music, right? Okay. So we have the biggest manufacturing plant on the West Coast. That's our messaging. Is that critical to my survival? No, it's not. Not even a little bit, right? So let's look at Apple after Steve Jobs comes back from his little foray at Pixar. The messaging changed. Steve Jobs figured out that to be successful in communicating his brand, he had to start making his customer the hero in the story and focusing on their story instead of his story. I'm super guilty of doing this, by the way. You know, as a nonprofit, especially as we were kicking off, you know, we were trying to use every little thing that we could to convince people that we were really awesome. We felt like we needed to do that so that they would trust us with their money and their support. Once we changed the rhetoric so that the philanthropist was the hero in the story, the teacher who was supplying our products for their kids and was the hero of the story, everything changed. The same happened with Steve Jobs, but to a little bit of a bigger degree. This shift in marketing, do you remember the ads? I mean, it was years ago, but I bet you'll remember. So it was the PC versus the Mac ads, where the one guy, the PC, you're laughing, you remember, the PC guy was talking about all of the things that made their computer so good. You know, it has this Intel whatever, and it does all this processing and all this stuff. And the Mac guy was just an average Joe, and he's just like, it's easier to use. I use it because it's easy, you know, and that's it. And he was trying to speak to a pinch point from the customer's perspective. The villain in that story was inaccessible technology. And Steve Jobs figured that out, and he's just like, I'm gonna make this simple. So good writing is simple. Even if we have a superior product, we will lose if our customers' messaging is communicated more clearly. So we have to simplify our messaging. That's good storytelling. So in the first few pages of a book or the first few minutes of a movie, the audience should know these things. What does the hero want? What or who is keeping them from what they want? And what will life look like if they don't get it? Let's relate that to business for just a second. Customers need to be able to answer these questions within 5 minutes when they come to your website. What does the company offer? How will it make my life better? And what do I need to do to buy it? That's it. That's totally it. So we're not focused on, we have the largest manufacturing plant in the West Coast. They don't care. They're busy. They get 3,000 calls to action a day. Tell them why. Tell them quickly. Tell them clearly. That's good storytelling. So these are some resources that I love and am drawing on for this presentation, especially this story, building a story brand. It's fantastic. What I love about it as an author is it follows the 7 points plot structure by Christopher Booker that I have used to write multiple novels, but relating it to brand. So the basic structure is this. This is our sense-making device, okay? A character who wants something. Simple. Who is our character? We're going to talk about that in a second. But encounters a problem before they can get it. A guide steps in and gives them a call to action and helps them avoid failure and find success. That's it. That's the whole formula. So let's break it down. So our main character is our customer, not our brand. I want you all to say it with me. My main character is my customer, not me. Okay, ready? Together. My main character is my customer, not me. That's it. You are not the star of the show. And you might be thinking, I did all this work though, and I'm pretty awesome. They don't care. That's not central to their survival. That is not even rank in their top 10. And they're probably really good people and they don't care. Okay? Too many messages for that. So every line that we write, and as an author, when we create a plot, every word that goes into that story has to serve the plot. The same thing is true here. Every line we write in marketing should serve the customer's story, or it should be edited out. And I've gone through some serious edits where editors have suggested removing whole characters, removing whole scenes, removing whole acts, because they distract from the message. I think of like, who's a good character? Somebody shout a character. Okay, Matilda. Matilda is a great character. Matilda is a story of a girl who comes into some magic, right? She has this ability and it helps her survive a terrible family home situation, okay? So Matilda, if the story of Matilda started to be about like brushing her teeth or, you know, the shoes that she bought yesterday, if Matilda started to have a friend who had a problem that was unrelated to anything that was going on, the main plot point of the story, it would be distracting. It would be like Jason Bourne doing his laundry. You know, like we don't really want to see Jason Bourne do his laundry. I mean, maybe we do. But you get my point. You get my point. It doesn't serve the plot. It doesn't serve the plot. So it's not progressing the story, okay? So we got to keep it simple or we got to edit it out. So what does your character want? I have some examples here. I didn't go all fantasy and sci-fi. I gave you a contemporary. What does the character want? Frodo wants to destroy the ring in the fires of Mount Doom, right? Luke needs to like defeat the Empire. And what about Emily in Paris? What does she want? Oh, you have no idea. I thought you were really excited to answer that. Emily wants to survive in Paris and be successful there, even though her culture is very different than the one she experiences here. Did I hit it? Okay. So, and just wear really good clothes. So what is the villain keeping the character from what they want? You're going to see on this sheet of paper, I have a few notes. I want you to choose one character that you want to focus on for the purpose of our time together today. And you can replicate this process for other characters. So you need to decide, is it a consumer of a product? Is it a boss that I'm trying to pitch something to? Is it whatever the character is? Go ahead and identify them and write them down. The other thing is, what does the character want? I want you, even before you finish filling in what does the character want, because we haven't talked about external and internal. I kind of want to skip a bullet ahead and talk about the villain a little bit. There is always going to be a villain in opposition to what the character wants. Your customers have villains. Your customers have, and depending on who you're pitching to, that villain's going to be very different. If you're pitching to a boss who is under the pressures of maintaining a budget, but you have a really good idea that you think will move the needle on your bottom line, that pitch is going to be very different than a consumer who you want to sell, I don't know, name something. What can I think? A car to? Sure, a car. That pitch is going to be very different. So who is the villain? Obviously, we have some villains up here. I really like these examples. A villain, if you can humanize a villain, it's really powerful. Mucinex did this with a booger. I'm sorry, I included a booger in my presentation. I feel like I've reached a point that you just ask yourself, how did a series of rational decisions lead me to this point in my life? But I really did it on purpose, and I would do it again because it's a great ad. It's humanizing, it literally in caricature form, the enemy, right? That is the villain that Mucinex is trying to put the character in position to fight. Allstate Insurance has been brilliant in their marketing campaigns. You guys know the story of Allstate. the Super Bowl ad and everything. Well, Mayhem, the character Mayhem, Mayhem is everywhere. Really playing on our survival needs to thrive, but also giving a literal face to Mayhem was just brilliant. Who is the villain? It could be, for my nonprofit, the villain is illiteracy. It's ignorance. It's a world where we don't have creative thinkers and that we trust AI to do it all for us forever. Anyway, notice I pinpointed a villain in that, right? So yeah, iPads are my villain. So kind of going back to the point before, what does the character want? What they want and what they're in opposition of. We can't want something if we have a lack of it, right? So they're obviously missing something. What they want is connected to these three conflicts. An external conflict, an internal conflict, and a philosophical conflict. And they're pretty self-explanatory. External is the physical barrier. Frodo needs to take the ring into the fire of Mount Doom, right? Luke must defeat the Empire. The internal is the conflict that has people turning pages. It is the why behind conflict. It usually will speak to backstory. It'll speak to something in the character's past that has really bothered them or impacted them negatively. And so their internal drive to solve that problem is here. So it points to backstory, internal motivation to solve a problem. Is he a Jedi? That's an internal problem. It's something that he's trying to work out on his own. The philosophical, why does it matter? This points to a deeper meaning, and I should add too that usually this phrase, the philosophical conflict, has the words ought or should in it. I'll give you some examples before I set you loose, because I'm going to give you a second to rate and discuss here in just a minute. So this is an example that's taken from the story brand. He uses the brand Tesla. And he says, the villain is gas-guzzling inferior technology, okay? External is, I need to buy a car. Remember, the hero is the customer, not you. Okay, I need to buy a car. Internal, I want to be an early adapter of new technology. Another way you could see this, just because I'm gonna be cynical, is I want to be seen as someone who is an early adapter of new technology. That's connected to survival. The impression that we give the community is connected to our survival. That's why like Gucci does well, right? Influence matters. Influence is connected to survival. Okay, anyway, philosophical. My choice of car ought to help save the environment. Do you see the ought or should? It's there. Here's one for my book drop program. The villain is the growing illiteracy crisis. And I wanted to make sure that I was clear. For this, the customer I'm focused on is a potential donor, okay? So the growing illiteracy crisis is the villain. External, I want to help kids gain access to books. Notice I added my little cynical one too. Or I need to pick a charity for a tax write-off. If I ignore that's one of the motivators, then I'm missing part of the story. But anyway, moving on. External, no, I said that. Internal, I want to be a good person. When I'm approaching a donor, I focus on the philanthropic drive that people have to want to help other people. That is a real thing too. And if I'm being more cynical, I want to be seen as a good person. I deal with that all the time. And you know what? Their money is as green as the others. That's terrible and maybe a little bit cynical, but we have to be honest with ourselves as we're telling this story, or we're gonna miss opportunities, okay? The last one, philosophical. All kids should have access to books. Do you see the should statement? Ought, should. Okay, so we're not gonna move on yet. I want you guys are at tables and you're at a networking event. So what I would like you to do is take a second to really see if you can answer the internal, external, and philosophical conflict that your character is facing. What do they want? And approach it from that internal, external, philosophical. Once you're done, we'll give you a few minutes to do that. I want you to start a discussion talking about the villain that your customer or stakeholder is facing. And if you can use an internal, external, philosophical angle in your conversation, then you get extra bonus points. Okay, I'm gonna give you 5 minutes, so go ahead and start. All right, you guys, how are we doing? 30 seconds. I'll let you finish up your conversation, last thoughts. I would love insights. I want to know, did you think of something that you hadn't before? Did you have an epiphany? Or did somebody at the table have a really good comment that you feel like you want to brag for them about? What was a good villain? Give me some good examples. Cam? Oh, awesome. Now I'm curious about who your customer is. Who's your customer? As an owner of a high school senior, that's a hilarious statement, by the way, because if you have a high school or have ever had a high school senior, you know you don't own them at all. But I think that's a perfect villain. Going to school. Yes? Okay. I love that. I love that. So lack of confidence. That's a great villain. Yes. Any others? Give us the character, give us the villain. Okay, here and then in the back.
Sure. So one of my characters was an employer seeking to find reliable employees.
Okay.
And the villain is the fact that through the whole hiring process, it's hard to know the whole person that you're interviewing.
Right, you're only seeing this sliver. That's a really good example. Like, do you really know them? I'm writing the ad in my head right now. Like, how much do you really know? It's like what's below the surface. You could use so many water elements in that. But awesome. Yes, here. That's a huge industry. Just improving process. That's a major industry. Companies spend thousands of dollars to send them to the Women's Leadership Certificate to learn how to be a better leader and build better processes. I think that's a really great identifier there. Speaking of women's leadership, I meant to mention it in the beginning. If you haven't ever attended the program or heard anything about it, it's fantastic. I really, really enjoyed my time attending with my cohort. Okay. Yeah. Come over to Renee. We'll get you registered. Okay. So here you go. So let's move on, just for the sake of time. The next part in this script is the guide. The character meets a guide, and they aren't looking for another hero. They're not looking for somebody to share the spotlight with. You know, that's the beauty of reading, is when we read a book, even more than in film, we insert ourselves into the main character. We are the most egocentric creatures on the whole planet. Because we automatically, and it's actually the reason why we have the ability to empathize with others too, the ability to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. So they're looking, they already feel like the hero. You're reminding them of that, okay? So they're not looking for another hero. They're looking for someone to help them be the hero in their own story. So how can we help our characters win? A good guide will always provide a path for success. Your product or your brand, if you're an individual seeking advancement, you're going to be the solution for them. So the purpose of the plan is to alleviate the major fears of the customer, which means we have to know what they're afraid of. This points back to the villain, right? So we're going to alleviate those fears by supplying a plan. It can be a philosophy to embody or clear steps to take, but it's the bridge that's going to help your character cross the divide between what they want and the problem that's keeping them from it, okay? So the guide has to show a couple of things. They need to show that they are empathetic to the problem. They understand, they've been there, they identify it. Just by stating somebody's truth, it validates them, right? So they have to show that they know what the problem is. They have to show empathy for it. And then they have to prove that they are an authority that can help them overcome it. So Noom. Is anybody familiar with Noom? Okay, Noom, if you're not familiar with it, is a company. It's a software, it's an app that helps people lose weight. But their purpose and the way that they advertise this was just so brilliant, because there's so many like calorie trackers and different things out there. I brought up Noom because they freaking sold me. I'm like, I consider myself a little bit of a hard sell, because especially with like weight loss stuff, I'm super cynical of that. I'll just hike up the Y 5 times. That's not going to work, you know? Anyway, so with Noom, they provided a 3-step plan that was going to help me lose weight. Now you're all looking at me and going, didn't work, huh? They fooled you. No, I'm just kidding. So the first step was, and with each one of these steps, they targeted one of my skepticisms, one of my fears. They said, we'll make it easy to track your food, and we'll remind you to do it, because I'm a human and we're all ADHD nightmares, right? Squirrel, 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 messaging. So we're going to remind you to do it. We're going to provide education every single day, and we're going to give you a community that's going to help you through. To succeed, you're going to do 3 things. Notice the similarity in the number. There are 3 things that you need to do every day. You need to weigh yourself every day, which is basically saying like do the worst thing in the whole world that you could ever think of doing in your life every day. You're going to do it, and it's going to take away the sting of weighing yourself every day. And then the second thing was you're going to track your food every day, and you're going to get little badges every time you do it, and you're going to feel accomplished, like you did something. And it's going to trigger like dopamine and all sorts of things in your brain. It's going to make you feel really good. And then number 3, wait, did I do 3? Weigh yourself. oh, education, and then you're going to track your food. And that's all I needed to do. And it had a plan and it had a little graph. And by this date, I would hit my target weight. And it was, I have to admit, it was a good product. I really liked it. I'm not a sponsor. I'm not advertising for them, but I do bring them up because they understood that their customer, the hero, needs a plan. They need a guide that's empathetic, that has authority. I want to show you really quick CarMax's. I just took a screenshot of the main page of CarMax's website. Clear messaging, love your car, guarantee. That kind of, the guarantee word is triggering. It's triggering something that most people struggle with when they buy a car, a used car especially, is, well, how do I know I'm gonna love it? What if it's a lemon? What if something is going wrong? Buying a car is a stressful thing. CarMax understands that, so they include that word. You scroll down, oh look, it's a plan. This is the plan. And we're going to touch on each one of their pinch points, the customer's pinch points. They're not talking about how awesome they are. They're saying, do more from home, test drives for real life, love it or return it. They're talking to each one of the things that the customer fears that is connected to their survival. Time, huge, right? We're gonna make this convenient and we're gonna take away the sting. Okay, so the guide's job is to call the character to action. You need to go forth, Frodo, and go on this journey. You need to become a Jedi, Luke, whatever. So the characters are never gonna take action unless they're asked to. I went skydiving last year, and I, in a billion years, would not have left that plane if I hadn't been sold on the ground and then strapped to somebody when the door opened. It was terrifying. The character will not jump. They will not take that next step unless they're called to do it. And the call triggers a sense of survival. Okay, so we need to be bold with this. We don't assume that they already know what we're talking about. I can't tell you in my early days of pitching how many times I would be in a meeting with somebody who my ultimate objective was to try and create a strategic partnership or was to try and get a sponsorship. And by the time we were done, they said, so what are you asking? That's a huge problem. It means that I was too afraid. I didn't want to come, and I think that this is common. We're afraid of coming across as the hardcore salesman, right? We just picture those plaid pants in our head when we're trying to make a sale. I'm referencing used car salesmen. My husband was one for 10 years, so I can say that. Anyway, do not assume that your characters know what you're asking. Do not assume that the customer knows that you want them to buy. It seems logical, right? We run conferences for teenagers and tweens, and we have to put register now on our main page of our website multiple times so that people understand that's what we want. That's the call to action. So there's two types of calls to action. There's the direct call to action and the transitional call. Are you guys familiar with this? The idea of a direct call to action is register now, okay? It's buy now. It's get a quote. Whatever you're asking, you ask for it. You say it multiple times, you put it in a prominent place. If it's a buy now button, put it in the top corner of your web page, and don't have any other clutter there. Just that, simple. There was an example in the StoryBrand book that I loved. It was of a painter, and the author of the book was teaching a class, and he had a business owner that says, my business is too complex to summarize in simple messaging. And his website, he's like, can we use your website? And he puts his website up. And first of all, he's just like, I paint, our company paints houses. They paint for industrial, but they also have like this special paint that's used in hospitals that's hypoallergenic, or I don't know what it is, but it's something. So they had 3 different types of customers that were all very different. And Donald Miller throws his website up on the big screen and sees this painting of their building. And it's a beautiful building. And it looks classy and nice. And Donald Miller's response to it was, do you offer free breadsticks? The company was trying to sell. They were proud of their new building. They wanted to show that they were a big deal and a substantial, had a substantial foothold in the marketplace. But they made it about them. They didn't make it about their customer. And so Donald Miller gives the example of, and asks everybody in the audience, if we were to put a man holding a paintbrush on this website and one button that's and text that says something like, we paint all sorts of crap, and a button that says get a quote, would you be more likely to press that button and understand what this guy does? And it was an overwhelming yes. Simplify, have a clear call to action. If they are not ready to click buy now, we always have a transitional call to action. We have triggers on our website that say that I see that you had something in your cart, or I see that you visited us. We would love, and actually that you wouldn't get an email because they haven't done this yet, but I digress. The idea of a newsletter or offering something for free, with our nonprofit, we offer free resources to teachers, aspiring authors, educators, things like that, because we want them to come to our site, and they may not be ready to buy now, but if we give free things, if we ask them in a transitional call to action to maybe join our newsletter so that they can get free access to these resources, we now have them in our system. We're going to be careful and responsible with the way we use that email, but we're also going to be very strategic. And eventually, once they are exposed enough to our brand and trust us as like our guide, they will eventually hit that buy now button is the hope, right? That's really important, establishing that trust and providing 2 options for them to say yes to you, because most people want to say yes. Okay, the last 2 things are, we just need to show what failure looks like. If it's a termite company, we show the statistics that 90% of people have termites in their home. That's not a real statistic, don't worry. I'm just throwing that out there. We show an honest statistic, or we show a house that is dilapidated and falling apart, or like grandma's grand piano like crumples because the legs were eaten by termites. I don't know, but we show what failure looks like. Mayhem with Allstate, mayhem is everywhere. That's their whole gig, is showing what failure looks like. The reason why is because loss aversion is our biggest motivator. The research tells us, and multiple studies can confirm this, is that people are more motivated to avoid a problem than they are to solve a problem. Interesting. And a little cynical, right? But it's real. So we show them this not to fearmonger, but to make sure they understand what is at stake if they don't use your brand, okay? And then we also show them what victory looks like. In writing, we're always told that we should have a clear, and I do this before I start any book. I have what's called an opening image and a closing image. I see the world before and the world after the character has gone through this big transformation. And I placed them side by side. And I asked myself, is the distance traveled great enough to make this an interesting story? And if the answer is yes, then I will retain the customer, my reader, right? Or the hero in the story. So we need to tell them what the story looks like if they use the product. Where is your brand taking people? That's a really important question to answer. Where is my brand, whether it's me individually as my personal brand, my company, my product, my program, where are we taking people? Heather, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Can I do that? Heather is one of our amazing department head gurus. She runs a program for tweens, 9 to 12-year-olds. She puts on conferences, works with some of the biggest authors in the country to help them workshop with their own stories. It's really cool. We're in the process of gearing up for some events this fall, and we have a little librarian appreciation week gift that we were taking to all of the librarians in Utah County, school librarians at elementary schools in Utah County. Heather wrote a little letter talking about our programs and what they offered. And then we talked story brand for a little bit. And Heather changed. She's like, don't print that. I just rewrote it. And the beauty of working at a nonprofit that's about literacy and that is populated with awesome staff that are all great writers is that they just produce stuff like this that's so great. And we don't need to read it all, but look at the difference and look at how she places the customer in the role of hero. Dear intrepid book hero, that back to school energy fading already, identifying the villain, struggling to instill a vibrant culture of literacy in your students while competing with the constant pull of screens, the villain, right? She's placing herself in an empathetic role. She understands the struggle. She's reminding them of the villain. Let us help, enter the guide. Tween Author Boot Camp's November conference connects your 9 to 12-year-old writers with Newbery Award-winning and #1 New York Times bestselling author mentors for a thrilling night of learning that will make your job easier. Because it's about them. Remember, we got off subject. If we get off subject, if we go too far about us, right? It's about them. This is a tool that will help you. Your students will return from our event with how many steps? 3. The magic number is between 3 and 6. 3 is best. Increased love of reading and writing, greater confidence in their unique stories, renewed energy for learning and creating, addressing all of their really, truly survival needs of a teacher, right? You can use this storytelling application, and I'm gonna close with this. You can use the storytelling application in every form of messaging, in your website design, in your email to librarians, or in your inner office communications. What if business owners approached their employees as though they were the heroes in the story? Because guess what, owners? They are. They absolutely are. If we could empower our staff with this messaging, if we can empower our customers with this messaging so that they leave their encounter with our brand feeling like they are about to conquer something, then we're doing our job well. Communication is simple if we follow this framework. You guys, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your time. I hope that you are able to gain from this script. Again, acknowledging Donald Miller's story brand script. That's one of the big inspirations for our talk today. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you so much, Jen. And are you okay if we put you on the spot for some questions? Does anyone have any follow-up questions for Jen? They're too busy thinking about their characters and their villains, and that's okay. Thank you so much. Oh, we do have one back here. Okay.
That is a great question. That is a great question. So on our website at teenauthorbootcamp.com, there are several ways that you can get involved. In fact, there's a button that says Get Involved, where it gives you the option to volunteer, to donate, to share resources, things like that. So teenauthorbootcamp.com. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes. Limiting beliefs? Yeah, for sure. I mean, everyone, I think anyone who's trying to do something great is going to have major imposter syndrome, and they're going to have major fear. And those fears take their villains, right? And they take different identities. For me, some of my fears were letting people down. I think, and by letting people down, it was letting those are the people that we were trying to serve, who were looking to us to provide a solution, but letting my staff down. You know, when I went through a pitch, and this is why pitches are so scary, because they have consequences. Like, whoever we're talking to has the power to change our lives, sometimes. And so I had to really focus hard on not making my pitch about my fear of failure. Because it's like sharks in the water, they can scent that, right? If I focused on, okay, if I don't make this pitch, then I'm not gonna be able to make that hire, and my staff is overworked and underpaid already, you know what I mean? I had to keep the focus about the customer. That was probably the biggest thing. And I just wanna say one more thing, and then I'll come to you. Anytime you experience fear in business and in life, it's either because your body, your brain is telling you that you're about to do something dangerous, but it is often and the mark of you're about to do something great. I talked about jumping out of an airplane last year. Some of the coolest experiences that I've ever had in my life have come on the other side of extreme fear. And so I've started to use that as a meter for greatness. This is terrifying. Oh, it must be awesome. And it's taken me some time to get that transition. Yes.
So when selling your books, who is your main character, like your customer, and who's their villain?
Okay, great question.
Yeah.
Aspiring author. Okay, so when selling my books, I have two customers. If I'm selling my book because I really have one customer. I have to convince the reader that they believe in the journey. I have to create an emotional connection between the reader and the main character so that they will follow me on this journey. So they're my customer. I have to write something compelling. In publishing, and especially after getting my first book published, my customer changed a little bit because it became my editor in a lot of ways. I wanted to be true to my audience, but my book doesn't see the light of day unless I convince a gatekeeper. So if I ignored the fact that, and authors that morally are like, I'm writing this for me, or I'm writing this because I think fans will love it, and they ignore the industry and the gatekeepers in the industry, then they often never get published. And it's sad, but it's true, because publishing is a business. And so I have to pay attention to my word count, because if I'm over a certain number of words, it costs more for the publisher to print my books. So the editor, I have to make sure that it's timely. I have to sell them. So that's what I focus on. but I also I can't ignore the other character, which is my reader.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so
long answer. Sorry.
So for the reader, like, who would you say is the villain? Like, who's the reader's villain?
Boring books. Boring books that have poor pacing and that don't take them on a journey, that don't show character development and take a character from point A to point B with massive change that happens and growth. Boring books, though, especially these days when we have all of these resources at our fingertips. If I don't sell a character in 5 pages, they'll move on. So yeah, good question.
Okay, I think you're off the hook now.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much, Jen. And thank you to all of you for coming. It was so good to see you here this morning. I know that some of you probably have to cut out and go to the office. Some of you have time to stay. The time that we have left, that is for you to mingle with the folks here. So we encourage you, if you have a few minutes, to stay and connect with the folks here. We also ask that on your way out, you either grab the QR code that's at your table. It's also posted at a couple of spots around the room and on the door, and take a very brief survey so that you can give us some feedback about your experience, and we can use that to deliver even better programming for you. So thank you so much. I hope some of you can hang out, and we hope to see you next month on October 25th. You will receive a direct invitation for that through email with the registration link. So we hope that we will see you again on October 25th. Thank you so much.